Loki is in love. Ravana is not to be trusted. We meet the Time Lords. Mobius never gets his jet skis. And then shit gets weird. Welcome to the MCU Pod.
Then shit gets weird. Yeah.
And then shit gets weird.
Yeah.
Welcome to MCU Pod, your companion podcast to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm your host, Grant Davis, and alongside me is my co-host, Mike Garcia.
Hello. We have a great guest today, Grant.
We do. We're excited once again to be joined by our buddy and TV critic, Melissa Giramonti.
Hello. So great to be here.
Right, live from Canada. How's it up there?
We're starting to come out of our pandemic hibernation, so it's kind of nice at the moment.
Good to hear. Good to hear. I'm excited for you to be on this episode because this was an awesome episode of Loki. Episode 4 was just like, I enjoyed episode 3, but I think a lot of people were like a little let down that it was short and kind of self-contained and didn't have enough Mobius. And this one, everything was happening and it was bonkers. Very excited for you to be able to join us. Before we get into discussing that, I do want to say that if you guys are first checking us out, welcome. And if you're watching us live on YouTube, if you want to comment to us, you can type POD at the start of your comments and we'll be able to see them over on the side. We'll pop your comments on here and we appreciate all the engagement. Hey, our buddy Clyde is here. I should send a link to him, see if he wants to pop on too. Yeah. We would love to have your feedback there. If you want to help us out, you guys know, you know all the other ways you can really help us out. What you might not know is that we're also available over on patreon.com/MCU Pod. That's where you can financially support us and you can give us, it's a monthly donation. So if you want to give $1 a month, $2 a month, 3, 4, 5, I think I set categories for all of them. And you can join different silly groups like the Avengers or the West Coast Avengers or the Illuminati, whatever you want. We appreciate all of your support, and that's what helps us run this little podcast. I think that's about it. I don't really think I need to run into anything else. There's nothing else big in the news this week for Marvel, so unlike last week where we really went into talking about like Shang-Chi,
right?
This week, I think we can just kind of dive in to talking about the episode. What do you guys think?
Let's dive.
Time to belly flop right in.
All right. This week's episode, oh my gosh, the Nexus event is the name of the episode. Episode 4. And once again, this is directed by Kate Herron, is written by Eric Martin, and the IMDb synopsis is: frayed nerves and paranoia infiltrate the TVA as Mobius and Hunter B-15 search for Loki and Sylvie. We start this episode and discussion the same way we do every episode, with a little bit of snap judgments. I left that Patreon thing up there. Let me take that off.
Just keep it on the whole show. Come on.
We need the money. This is actually just a pledge drive, this episode. Melissa, you want to go ahead and kick things off? Give us your snap judgment.
This was probably one of my favorite episodes of Marvel television to date. There was just so much that happened, so many things that were revealed, but for everything they reveal, it's like another mystery is set up. Some things that I suspected all along actually were kind of proven true. And I guess I'll just have to wait and see how that all plays out. And as someone who is a huge Doctor Who fan, this is probably my favorite Doctor Who episode in over a decade. Because that's what it felt like.
It got pretty weird there at certain points.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pull up the very Doctor Who-y kind of stage here. I was loving
Doctor
this
Who,
stuff.
but with a budget.
With a massive budget. Because when I talk Doctor Who, I'm talking like David Tennant's first season. So like, what was that? 2005, 2006, like mid 2000s.
Spinning Christmas trees and shit.
Oh, before that, even before the spinning Christmas trees.
Evil mannequins.
No, if anything, it was like, it brought me back to like some of my favorite episodes of that show, which is like The Impossible Planet and The Satan Pit, which are kind of those dark, near apocalyptic circumstances. And I don't know why I love that stuff. It's like a world on the verge of collapse. And how are they going to get out of it? Are they going to get out of it? So this just hit all the right buttons for me.
Mike, what do you give it?
I really loved this episode. I think it was probably my favorite episode of the entire run since the premiere. There was some really clever and super compelling like examination of the Loki character in this episode. We've been getting that all along, but it felt deeper here. There was some great like thematic character-based storytelling, which is what I'm here for. And like we're saying, it was all surrounded by just more and more increasingly bizarre sci-fi concepts and wild reveals and what the fuck moments. I mean, the timekeepers are Chuck E. Cheese robots and Loki is also an alligator. It's like, yeah, bring on the crazy. I bought the ticket. I'm here for the ride. As long as you can ground all this grand silliness in like an emotional story with great actors that I find emotionally compelling, I'm in. And that's what's happening. Like, it's pretty exciting.
Everything you said. And I feel like the emotional beats are also there. Like, I was kind of kidding, but I also saw elements of the relationship between Loki and Sylvie in last episode, and that's like how I started off our discussion last week of like, oh, it's a romance between him and himself. But in a way, Loki the narcissist, it makes sense that what he would find appealing is himself, and that's what we essentially got here. There's an element of a love story there, and I'm okay with it. I think some people were like, don't ship them, and I was like, well, if it goes that way, that's fun. And you know, there's something tragic about Mobius, and I'll be admittedly disappointed if we don't see him on a jet ski at some point in this season. But there's stakes when you see, you know, those two characters get blasted, and that was intense. For a second, you know, Mike, you brought it up too when we were chatting about this earlier. You're like, they're handing the reins to Sylvie, and I kind of wish we didn't see that end bumper scene with the alligator, because it's like, that's balls in a TV show to like just be that daring and just say, we're killing off that main character. We're switching over who the main protagonist is, and ride with us because we're Marvel and we have your money. You're going to do whatever we say. So yeah, I mean, all of this, just the pacing and the energy of it, even the repetitive elements with Sif popping in just to knee him, it was still fun. It was a fun bit. I feel bad that I keep seeing Sif like pop into MCU, but just as like gimmicks instead of getting to be her real character, it feels like. But whatever. It's fun for us, the audience, I guess.
Yeah, maybe one day they'll bring her back like in earnest. We'll see.
I think she was. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say they should do a series that's her and like, but she's somehow on Earth and doesn't know why, and they find her in a bag in the middle of Times Square.
And she's naked and has a bunch of badass tattoos.
Yeah. I think it'd be a pretty interesting show for a few seasons.
I think it might have some fans. Yeah.
We got a snap judgment from the audience. Will Morris says the show needs more goo-goo. Give us more goo-goo. Yeah, agreed. Oh, and
yeah, more.
We have another guest on here.
Oh,
Clyde.
I'm only here because Melissa's here.
Clyde Haynes is here. So Clyde.
Well, this is perfect timing because we just gave our snap judgments, and it's your turn. You can tell us what you thought of episode 4.
Okay, so I have to say that the best comment that I've heard so far goes to Mike in reference to calling the timekeepers Chuck E. Cheese robots.
It's like the dumbest thing I said. Thank you.
No, but seriously, if you think about a couple weeks ago when I was on, we were talking about there's a question of who do you think the timekeepers are? Robots would have not been an answer that I would have co-signed on. So this show, and I say that to say what's amazing to me about this show is that we all watch a lot of television. The four of us watch more television than your average human being, probably. And so for you to do something that surprises me at least 3 times in this episode was like, okay, wow, like this is different. Like I look back and I was talking to my wife and going and trying to explain this show to her. And I was trying to go like, it's different from WandaVision. It's different from Falcon. Like this has got a different feel. And I like it. Now it's hard for me to explain exactly why, right? Like from an MCU Marvel type of standpoint, how do I explain to someone what makes this an incredible show? But that's a part of it. The fact that
it's like Doctor Who with a budget. I liked that one.
It's Doctor Who. Well, I mean, Doctor Who on a budget was also a great comment because look, there are people who there's gonna be a bunch of fans who just hate me after this, but I keep trying to watch Doctor Who. I keep trying to get into it, and some weird space Muppet gets in the way of me really trying to get in. But you're right. If Doctor Who had a real budget, right? This is the
Sometimes
evolution. Well, this is like the evolution to me of like Farscape, right? It's the stories there. You've got these aliens that look not quite comical, but interesting. I just thought this episode was really fascinating, and I was kind of glued to my seat every minute. And again, it's not to reference yet another show, but if I think like it had that moment to me of Game of Thrones when Ned Stark died, right? Like, oh, sorry, spoiler alert.
I'm just being a goof.
Yeah. 8-year-old spoiler alert.
Yeah. But like when I look over and I see Loki dematerializing, I'm kind of like, no. Yes. Okay. Like I didn't expect that. That's what the show gives you. It's just not predictable. And yeah, I mean, we joked about the whole love scene, like the idea of Loki on Loki romance. And I thought it would be weird. And it probably is weird. So maybe that's just something about me. But it also kind of sort of made sense. So I thought that I thought this was a great episode. I might watch it again.
Game of Thrones, I think, prepared us for that not to be as weird.
Yeah, and so did Star Trek Picard season 1. 2 things on what you said. I agree with everything you're saying, Clyde. And the thing about when they hit Loki with a melty stick right after hitting Mobius with the melty stick, or what do they call it, the pruner, right?
Pruning, yeah.
Pruning.
This show has shown us such bizarre things that were so unpredictable from the beginning that it earned that moment of suspense for us where we actually thought, for a large part, I think most of us thought, at least for a second, is Mobius actually dead? Is Loki dead? Like that was like a compelling bit of suspense for a few seconds for me, legitimately, in this episode. I was like, because the show in small gradual ways, the show has been somewhat pushing the boundaries of what a show like this can do, and been so bizarre and revolutionary from the beginning that it earned that. So I thought maybe this is actually happening. So, but that only lasted a minute. I was like, oh no, there's no way. They pruned them both. They're going somewhere else, and we can discuss where we think they are in a little bit. But the other thing you said, Clyde, about the romance between Loki and Sylvie, I was falling for that relationship last episode when we spent all that time with them. The episode was dedicated to them building that relationship, and here, when that relationship was threatened, I really didn't want it to break up. I wanted them to get closer, and I don't think it's weird. I think a big thing that Loki responds to in Sylvie is that she is so incredibly different from him. But she, like a lot of people, I can speak for myself. When I fell in love with my wife, she showed me things that I could be, right? She was like, she made me better just by being who she was. And I think that's part of what Loki sees in Sylvie. Oh, this person is me, but so different, and actually so courageous and brave and so strong, of living her entire life on the run and outwitting this huge force like the TVA for decades. I don't know. I just think he finds that very attractive and compelling. So it makes sense for me that he would be in love with her.
To just add on to that, and I mean, I don't see so much a romantic love between them as I see insane chemistry and a massive respect, especially on Loki's part. Like, Loki sees Sylvie as a worthy, someone who is worthy of the moniker Loki. So to me, I think that's an even bigger thing than, a potential romance, that him being able to say that there is someone else that is God level like him. And that, I think, really came through in this episode.
Yeah, I'd add to that, Melissa, that last week at work I was in a meeting and there was a woman who every time I'm in a room with this woman, she's all smiles. And she kind of shared with us that she was going through kind of a pretty difficult time in her life, but she's deliberately and intentionally looked for joy and happiness in every day. And I think when I look at her, I go, man, I want to be like that. Like, I want some of that in my life, not to get bogged down by the things that are going wrong, but to look for the joy in every day. I think that when Loki looks at Sylvie, he's looking at pieces of himself that he's going, she is courageous. Like, she figures things out on her own. Like, I want some of that. And because she's Loki, he's looking and going, I can be that. So I think she inspires him to almost be a better version of himself, because the version that we know of Loki is the trickster. He's always kind of out for himself. And Sylvie has a bit of a higher purpose, a calling. And he's looking at that and going, he's drawn to it. Drawn, Mike, to your point, to be a better version of himself. And so I don't know if it's love, and there's a romance in it. I don't need to see all that, but I think what we're seeing is that the Loki that we've always known, that's always looking for a way out, he's going, I want to be the god of Asgard. I want to be Thor-like in my own way. And I think that's why he's drawn to her.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be a romance. It kind of felt, at least
you think it's more platonic?
At least from Hiddleston's portrayal, I think it felt that way to me. But if it's platonic, that's probably even better.
Well, okay, and I gotta say this, and Melissa, feel free to jump all over me as the creator of FemTV. But do we need a romance? I mean, I feel like there's a romance kind of component in every one of these things. And I'm going, I don't know that we need one here. Right?
I mean, we definitely had the romance between Falcon and Winter Soldier.
And I was there for that.
I mean, we almost had the romance between the Winter Soldier and Falcon's sister.
Yeah.
That was real close. I'm just saying, I don't know that we have to have this romantic chemistry here.
No, we don't.
No, definitely not. I think that the way they're writing this so far, that even if it did kind of go in that direction, the way they've written Sylvie is that she won't just feel like she is, a romantic interest for Loki. They've established her enough as her own character. Like, they've established her quite well as her own character and given her agency and a purpose and everything. So she's not just there to further Loki's storyline.
Right.
And
in fact, she's like taking the torch, right?
Exactly. And to go back to what Mike was saying about the pruning, when that happened, I was like, oh my gosh. And then I was like, well, if Sylvie's taking the reins, I'm on board.
Yeah, she's
Right.
earned it.
Mm-hmm.
I almost wish they didn't undercut that with that end scene.
Yeah.
I have a theory on that, why they did that, because they wanted to avoid the outrage.
Yeah.
They could not deal with. I think that to avoid a week's worth of rage, fan outrage, yeah.
Or the speculation that they are fully handing the reins, only to yank the rug out from Sylvie. I mean, it goes both ways. You might as well nip that in the bud, I guess.
And I hate to keep bringing it back to Doctor Who, but when we see what happened when the Doctor shifted into a woman, there was huge outrage. They're like, oh, they're trying to be social justice warriors. So I'm sure there were a lot of people sitting there watching that saying, oh no, female Loki. I guess they're trying to check off diversity boxes.
Are they idiots? Have they seen Broadchurch? She is amazing.
I know.
My message to those people.
Exactly. But it makes fandom a not happy place when stuff like that happens.
It's so true. Yeah. I also think that I'm really glad we're not getting like a week-long press tour with Tom Hiddleston lying and being like, "Yep, I'm out of the show. It's over."
Right?
That would have been, because we've seen that before, and it builds mistrust, and it's not cool.
We have a couple other snap judgments I was just going to jump over to from the comments. Kern says, Loki is easily the MCU series I can see myself rewatching. The Loki Sylvie scenes are a blast. And I think this is going to lend itself to a fun rewatch. John Kelling says, Loki learning to self-love that's deemed so dangerous it could actually fracture reality is just really depressing. Loki can't even be happy for a minute. But on the flip side of that, I think that what we're saying about whether or not it's romantic or just a platonic love, what we see is the growth of this Loki based essentially to the same point that we had the original Loki before he essentially sacrifices himself to Thanos in Infinity War. And there was a growth and a respect for other people that we get Loki here truly caring and having a friendship with Mobius, and truly also caring about Sylvie and her well-being. And the Loki that we had to revert to, the 2012 Loki, was very selfish. And this story has evolved him to a point where we can see that this is the anti-hero who's becoming the hero. We can see this is Jaime from Game of Thrones, no longer pushing the kid out the window, but becoming the guy who's championing for Brienne, and he earns our trust back as the viewers. It's kind of like that, right?
Very much. This episode really doubled down on the idea that this series is all about Loki finding himself and figuring out who he is and who he wants to be, away from Asgard and all the trauma and drama of life as Odin's adopted son, right? It's very much a fun examination of a question that a lot of us have been asking since the first Thor movie. Is Loki truly a villain? And all along with the character of Loki on this show at this point, I'm thinking no, right? We know he's always been an outsider, and in this series we learned that he acted like a villain in the past because he was extremely insecure. That was all out of insecurity, and that insecurity led him to believe that he'd be alone for the rest of his life. That's his deepest fear. Like we saw him admit that to Sif in this episode. And if you're that insecure and you have an identity crisis like he's going through, and you always have felt like an outsider, you're never going to form like real and deep lasting relationships with people, because you'll always be like defensive, like he was with Lady Sif. Like she was kind of part of his crew, but he kind of felt like he could never relate to them, so he messes with them, he cuts her hair and all that stuff. Like that's such a fun like portrait of this character, and how he's growing. Like the way this show examines Loki's personality and presents his real awakening here is so fun, with like apocalypses and time looping pocket dimensions and alternative versions of the character. We'll talk about the alligator soon. It's very telling that the dude who made his name working on Rick and Morty, Michael Waldron, is the head writer on this show, because it's like exploring these deep psychological issues through this like increasingly bizarre and funny like sci-fi world.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, we already discussed the Loki expressing his concern for Sylvie and giving up the charade of pretending he doesn't care was a big character growth moment for him. But the writers also, I thought, it did a clever job with the shorthand way of also getting across the point of growth with Loki being trapped in that Sif loop, where she continues to beat him up until he finally comes to grips with admitting the problems of who he is, the deeper set problems that he's holding back. And he, that coupled with him confiding in Mobius and saying, I am your friend and I want you to trust me because of that friendship. And like, it was just like growth after growth after growth for a character that we've already seen that evolution before in a different timeline. But it's still satisfying to see that, because that's the person we were rooting for from the first episode. Like, become that other Loki.
Yeah. Well, become that other Loki, but like transcend the kind of hero Loki we've already seen, right? Let's see more, and let's see what else you can be, and that's where we're headed.
Well, I think what's fascinating in all of this is we see the growth, especially with Lady Sif. We see a particular interesting exchange between him and Mobius right before Mobius is pruned. And then we see him grow before our eyes. It's like almost literally watching the Grinch and his heart grows 3 sizes, right? Only then the difference is the Grinch has dinner with the people of Who, and in Loki, he's pruned. And so it was kind of interesting that as we see this growth and he becomes this character, we've wanted him. I don't even know if wanted him to be is the right word. We knew he could be, but we weren't sure he would ever get there. He gets there, and as Loki luck would have it, he dies.
What a brilliant thing to call it pruning, right? Because what is pruning is that you forcibly stop growth, and that's what happens. That's what happened to him in this episode, and we find out that's what's been happening to everybody pretty much in the TVA.
Yeah, and speaking of this TVA, I mean, I've had suspicions all along that there's some kind of puppet organization, shadow organization, and I want to know who is behind it all. I want to know who the wizard is. And I was getting like some very like Wizard of Oz vibes from it all since the beginning. And then actually seeing them in that room, it was like, okay, pull back the curtain. Let's see the coward that's behind the curtain. And
do you think that it's Gugu that is, or Ravana, I guess, that is the wizard behind the curtain?
I don't think so, but I think she is probably the second in command. Like, I don't think it's her. My suspicion is that they're going to reveal that it's someone we know of already.
Yeah, if we're looking at, like, I don't want to get caught in the whole Mephisto thing. Like, where's the real, the real villain? When's that straight hetero male real villain gonna appear? Like everyone was like in what was it WandaVision. It was like, oh, there's got to be another villain. It's not the witch next door, but it was the witch next door. Of course it was, and that's fine. But here it feels like I've already seen all this discourse of like, oh, it's Kang the Conqueror is the real villain pulling the strings, or some other villain is behind the scenes here. But I don't know, why can't it be Gugu? I think that would be cool. I think it's definitely going to be somebody that we've already seen in the show. It would be fun if it's Eugene Cordero.
You see me that I'm trying to pull that up?
Oh, I didn't even see that.
No, Mike, I think that would be hilarious. Oh boy. I think that would be hilarious. In a very Rick and Morty-esque like switch. I think Mike, when you talk about kind of WandaVision, one thing that I thought was interesting about WandaVision is there really wasn't a big bad. Like, you had the witch whose name escapes me at the moment. Agnes.
Agatha.
Yeah, Agatha, but she wasn't really the big bad. She was more like, what's going on here? And I'm going to take advantage of it. I want it. But she didn't create it. It wasn't her construction, and it wasn't her ultimate, master plan, right? It was just kind of, we were seeing the story around hurt and love and loss and grief. And I like that, I think. I don't know that we have to have this big bad. And so I'm really curious what's going to happen, because we had I guess theoretically we had a big bad in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right? And so I'm kind of wondering, like, there's a whole dynamic here. What will the unveiling be, right? Like, what will it be? And other than, and what's the subtext that we're going to get at, and why and where the big bad comes from?
Well, I feel like this lends itself to us going ahead and jumping in and discussing this end scene then, because this mid-credit roll, we have Loki. He's been pruned. He wakes up. And if some of you missed this mid-credit roll, I'm spoiling it obviously for you, but Loki wakes up and he's like, am I dead? Am I in hell? And he looks up and finds 4 alternate versions of presumably Loki standing over him saying, yep, you got to come with us. And this begs an interesting question of, do all of them die and go to a realm of alternate versions of them? So is Mobius surrounded by a bunch of other Mobiuses? Or is this potentially what Mike had theorized early on? And man, I want to go back and find the question for it. Here it is from Will Morris. Mike, is your Owen Wilson equals Loki variant theory still alive, or have we put it to bed? Because now the question is, are they all Lokis?
I'm not sure.
That would be interesting.
I'm not sure, because at this point, I really want Morpheus to be Morpheus. I really want Mobius to be Mobius and not a Loki. Because it's kind of getting ridiculous. Everything can be a Loki, like
he's a shapeshifter.
This is a Loki. Okay. Like, it's getting a little silly. I like it, but
you're the guy who likes Ralph Boner, so
yeah, I love Ralph Boner. But in terms of like where, like, I'm gonna plop this picture back up here. In terms of where Richard E. Grant and his homies, along with the alligator Loki, like, in terms of what's going on here, like your question was, does everybody who gets pruned get sent to a pocket dimension where like other pruned versions of them are awaiting them and they're just trapped there? I don't think so. I think maybe everyone is this, because I think one of these buildings here I think to the right is the Avengers Tower, and we see it just totally wasted. Right? Can you see it?
Looking.
Yeah.
I'm looking.
What I've been looking at this backdrop is it almost looks like after like New York is decimated in the first Avengers movie.
Right.
Hmm.
So it's almost like there is a certain real timeline where
Yeah.
Loki's attack on New York played out, and that's where these Lokis are.
Well-
But is everyone else there? Is everyone else who was pruned sent to this like decimated, shitty timeline for punishment or just to hide? I don't know.
Or
I
is
need-
this Loki's Nexus event? Is this where the multiple Lokis happened?
Okay.
I need to
Does-
know more
does-
about this this black Loki with the Thor hammer who looks like Theo Huxtable from the Cosby Show. I need to know who Theo Loki is.
We
They
get this
actually
question
named these
from.
characters.
Did they really?
They named
Oh,
these
wait,
characters in the credits. Yeah.
Ooh.
We got this question from Angel Bourgeois. Says, "Does Mobius wake up in a reality of Owen Wilson characters? Is Lightning McQueen there? I would love it. I would love
Could
that
be.
so much."
I mean, it's a Disney property, so
Mhm.
we could
Oh.
get some crossover.
Oh no, I want
Mike,
That'd be hilarious.
Dignan from
what are
Bottle
the-
Rocket to show up.
What are the names of these characters? Do you
Yeah,
have
I'm
it?
gonna find them.
Okay,
I'll find 'em.
Okay. I thought maybe you had it up. John Kelling says no, because Stark Tower didn't have the Quinjet hangar in the first Avengers movie. Oh, is that how? Potentially. This is such a confusing scene though, because he got sent here. What is the pruning doing then? Is the pruning simply dissolving you into an alternate reality? Is there some sort of junk timeline where everyone got sent? I mean, it doesn't seem like it's a coincidence that Loki would find himself facing alternate Lokis, including, it's very important to point out, that's Kid Loki, who's being set up for the Young Avengers, right? Like they have most of the cast for the Young Avengers now, including there's a Kid Loki.
That's
but
such
no.
a great name, by the way.
Yeah,
Kid
so-
Loki. Like
Ja-
that's a cool name, Kid Loki.
So yeah, the actor Jack Veal is credited in the show as Kid Loki. Let's see. The actor on the left is credited as Boastful Loki. The actor Dubai Opari is his name. And Richard E. Grant on the right in the classic Loki costume is credited as Classic Loki.
Classic. What about Gator Loki? No credit there?
I don't think that's an actor. I think that's a bunch of ones and zeros.
Fair. I want
No,
another name though.
I want them to put the Loki horns on an alligator.
So, do you guys think that, I assumed that who we heard talking to Loki was the Gator, but was it Richard E. Grant? Do you guys think?
I thought it was. Will Morris said Richard E. Grant looks like he's dressed for Comic-Con. I agree. But did anybody's lips move? I don't remember.
We never see anyone talking. All of a sudden,
Right.
we look up and see this scene, and I was like, "Oh, I bet it's the Gator talking to
Yeah.
him," because that would be wacky.
Probably was.
But I don't know. I also love seeing Richard E. Grant wearing this classic Loki outfit, because we also got in WandaVision the classic costumes for Wanda and Vision, and so it's fun that the shows are finding some weird opportunity to show those classic costumes here.
Yeah, I want to visit the world where the Richard E. Grant Loki, where it was acceptable to him to run around in this Kermit the Frog costume.
Am I the only one who thinks this costume is horrible? Is that just
Yes.
me?
No.
Okay.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. This is. It's
I
fun.
mean, the hat alone, I'm just thinking, how many things would you get caught on?
Yeah,
Right? Like,
it's impractical.
it's impractical.
Also,
Maybe he's just like
boastful,
7 feet tall and it's okay.
Yeah.
boastful Loki sounds like one of the Seven Dwarves, and it looks like it's almost like a steampunk Mjolnir thing. I don't know what this hammer is, but
It looks
it's
like
got more structure
yeah.
to it, and it's not like a stone made in a dying star as the main part of the hammer.
There's a lot
And
happening with that hammer. Some dude in Brooklyn made that.
the entire outfit though
Right?
is very steampunk.
Yeah.
And he wherever he's from, it's cold because he's got like the fur collar going on.
Yeah.
Which I mean, to be honest with you, I'm looking at this outfit and going, "Can I pull this off? Could I wear this?"
Do it.
Do it.
I mean, Mike, you're always trying to get me to like dress up. That is an outfit I might be willing to rock.
That's pretty fly.
Got some buttons.
Do it. Do it.
Well,
Just saying.
As long as
So,
Grant dresses up like classic Loki. And I'm down
Deal.
for Kid Loki.
That leaves Melissa as Crocky.
I'm there.
You gotta be crocky.
I'm there.
Croaky? Croaky.
Croaky.
I love it.
Loki.
Oh,
So we don't know what's going on with this weird ass planet. I don't know if people gave us some of their theories. Let's see. John Kelly says, what if this is a post-age of Ultron world where Ultron won and helped wipe out the planet? But again, like, why did Loki get sent here when he got pruned? Like, there's something weird there. If King the Conqueror is potentially the puppet master behind this world, and the TVA operates in the what's it called, the quantum realm, right? So it operates outside of the effects of the Infinity Stones, and it's tiny, and that fits with the King of the Conqueror's story. If he's operating out of there, but it's all a little bit of a charade, then maybe he's plucking people out of time and then giving them these fake tasks where it's like, oh, you need to go prune this timeline and you need to pluck another person out for me, so I have more people that are doing work for me. And so he's essentially building a very corporate army to do his bidding, and maybe sometimes they go out and do tasks that he needs to conquer new worlds, and they're all doing it under an assumption that they're pruning timelines, but they're not really. He's just building an army and conquering worlds.
That is a very logical assumption, and I don't think it's true at all. Because because
I don't know.
we know that Kang the Conqueror is going to be the villain in the next Ant-Man movie, and why he's just going to be an Ant-Man movie villain.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you,
You know?
Mike.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we would spend so much time building up such a part of the Marvel world that is so like strange and powerful and can hop to all different timelines based on just like some dude who's an Ant-Man.
The thing about to me at least, when I think about an Ant-Man villain, this is gonna sound harsh, but whatever.
Bring the hate, my friend.
This needs to be a movie that if I don't see, doesn't ruin the rest of the timeline for me. Because Ant-Man is, I haven't seen the box office mojo numbers, but I'd be willing to take a guess that of all of the Marvel movies, Ant-Man is probably in the low fifth, right? It's got to be at the bottom.
They're fine, they're fun, but it's just it's kind of like the Marvel, the minor part of Marvel cinema right now, which is fine. Oh, John Kelling is saying, I have a friend who immediately said boastful Loki is his next Halloween costume for the next few years. It's catching on, Clyde. We got to see you in it in October.
Okay.
Okay, well then let's go ahead and jump to the other big question. We get the decapitated, what do you call it, Chuck E. Cheese animatronics of the Timekeepers. There was definitely a vibe that felt like Darth Sidious, Star Wars, even Palpatine-esque, when they're brought into this chamber where they're just sitting up there looking down upon Loki and Sylvie. And it seemed like, okay, there's something sinister with these people, but we finally get to see them. This is kind of cool and exciting, only to have that reveal that they're also fake, and that it's a Wizard of Oz kind of thing. So how does one set that up, and how does how does Ravana not know? She has to know, right?
Well, that's what I was gonna ask. Like, I'm trying to think back. When it happens, does she seem surprised?
She
don't
seems
think
like she was getting.
She's getting her ass
I
kicked.
saw
Well, yes.
on Reddit someone said that when the first head gets cut off, the other two keep laughing, and then it sounds like someone in the background says, "See you soon," like in a whisper. I
That's
don't know.
weird.
I don't know if that's true, but I didn't go back and listen.
No, like
I
you
thought-
cannot believe what you read on Reddit. That's just
Well, what I like here is that this scene, even though it's like it looks incredible, especially with like the neon, and the smoke, and everything, and the triumvirate up there, but it's also like so tropey. And to find out that it was just somebody in the show creating a trope is great. It's just totally in line with what this show is doing, delivering the unexpected.
I have my one complaint about this show so far is in this scene. And I don't know if anyone else had the same issue, but I could not understand what some of the timekeepers were saying. I rewound it and listened to it a few times. And then finally, I had to turn the closed captioning on because I could not understand. The first one that spoke, yes. The second two, it was like, what on earth are they mumbling? I know it's got to be something important. And so finally I broke down. I don't think it was that important, but
Are you telling me you're not at the point where you're not watching everything automatically with closed captions on? Because I'm at
No.
that point already.
no.
I'm there.
The problem with that is if the closed captions aren't good, then I read what's happening before it actually takes place.
That's true.
And if it's something where there's a reveal, that just destroys it for you.
For me, if they make an error, like it's not written exactly as the words are said, it just bugs me. So
Yeah.
I tend not to.
I need him. I could not have gotten through like Mayor of Easttown without him. With that accent.
Well,
I had that Canadian advantage there. I think it was a little easier for me to understand Mayor.
Even so, if they're
No
going to have the
offense.
timekeepers be a little mushmouth like that, you can still just put captions on there.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
You know,
True.
sometimes they'll go talk to someone who's speaking English, but they go, people aren't going to know what this person's saying. They'll put captions underneath. You can do that with aliens too, guys, in Marvel.
I've watched shows where they've put closed captions under someone who's speaking English, but they're from Scotland.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you on my behalf.
Yeah, like in what's that movie where Brad Pitt is Snatch, where he's like doing this crazy "I need a caravan for me" accent, and you don't know what the hell he's saying, even though he's speaking English, but you get the subtitles embedded into the movie. Yeah.
There was a really touching scene where, B-15 breaks in and gets Sylvie to unlock her mind and see into the past. And then when she comes back to our reality, she goes, "I looked so happy." And it's just a heartbreaking line from her. And, definitely Mobius was doing something with jet skis then. He's a 90s boy.
well, I mean, I thought that was kind of cool, but my one nit to pick is why not show us what B-15 saw?
I really feel they just wanted to stay on the actor's face, and I think that worked really well because throughout the entire series, we've been seeing this actor. Let's see,
Wunmi Masako.
Masaku, yeah, as a hardliner, right? For the TVA, the hardest of hardliners. And it would have also been effective, like you're saying, Clyde, to see her in a different context with the memory and maybe have that juxtaposition. But I really appreciated like seeing the realization and the change happen just in that one shot on her face. I think that was really effective.
Right. And I mean, with the was it B20? I think was the other character who went back in time. We established
C20.
she was C20. We established that was like maybe like the aughts, or it could have been like the 80s. But if you're talking about like you have the option of plucking people throughout time, and then this next character is also going to be kind of around that same time period, also on Earth. I'm like, I don't know, like what are they all just being plucked from the 90s? Is that what's going on here?
Maybe they held back showing us the memory of Hunter B-15 because we'll get some like crazy reveal that, you know, she was a cave person or something wild. You know, maybe she's from the 1800s or something. Like I would
like
love to see
super
that
out in space, like way futuristic,
or something we can't even imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit is we explore a bit more of the relationship between Mobius and Ravonna, and it feels like a one-sided relationship a bit, where he has kind of this
Confirmed.
respect for her, and she's lying, and she's obviously okay with him. She kills him, and it's kind of sad because even in the intro credits, they hint at like her other analyst, and I thought we were going to see who that was. And I was expecting it to be another version of Mobius to pop up, but we don't see it.
It's Reed Richards.
it's Reed Richards. He's going to pop in. How do you compete with that? I don't know. Did you guys have any other thoughts on their relationship?
Yeah, I think I want to talk about real quick what was Sylvie's Nexus event, because we get this beautiful, quick summation of her story, where she's in Asgard, she's a kid, and she's playing with dolls, and she's playing on the side of the good guys, right? Oh, here comes Valkyrie to save the day, right? And doesn't seem like the Loki we know, and then they come in, they prune everything around her, and they take her away. And then she's smart enough to get away in the courtroom. And she tries to ask Gugu what was my Nexus event. And Gugu obviously lies and says, I don't remember. So what was that event, and why is it so important? Was it that because of all this pruning, whoever's doing this pruning needs Loki to be some kind of trickster villain, and this version was showing signs that she was not going to be that, so they had to take her out of the equation?
I mean, I almost wonder if it's one of those cases of if you see all these timelines and you know what will result from you plucking someone out, she's maybe the chosen one. She is she's the one that can help bring down the rest of the TVA, and maybe that's what this man behind the curtain wants. Maybe they want Sylvie to tear down the rest of the structure for some other ulterior motive. There's a lot of mystery that we don't know, and this show is very smart about how they're doling certain things out and then really keeping things quiet.
Well, and aren't there only 2 more episodes?
Yeah, there's only 2.
There's a lot to be covered.
They better be 2 hours long each.
No matter what happens, I get the feeling they're going to be great. And I think that's what we get with TV today, is that you can, instead of having 22 episodes of meh, you're going to get 6 really strong episodes, right? This is a movie cinema-esque, miniseries, and I think I'm expecting big things for these last 2 episodes.
It's also
John
a very
Kelly,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just real quick. John Kelling says, I'm sure her Nexus event was probably becoming noble. She was even concerned for that random variant at the TVA. That's true. The show went out of his way to show that this is a good kid.
Well, I think that's a really interesting point, because all the Loki that we know is 100% mischievous, with these moments of like heroism, but everything that we've really seen from Sylvie thus far is that she's actually a hero, right? In the traditional sense of the hero.
She's noble. Yeah.
She's noble. She's got higher purpose, and that higher purpose isn't necessarily to serve herself. Part of what she's doing is trying to free and expose the hideous TVA.
Yeah.
Right. So
Melissa, I cut you off on something, Melissa.
I'm back.
Oh, I was just going to say, having 6 episodes, like I've always been a big fan of British television that tends to have, you know, the shorter seasons. And one of the advantages of that is that you have this really tight, crisp story and not a lot of filler. And I kind of really appreciate that Marvel's taking that approach. For people who aren't used to watching, you know, British or even some of the Australian series and stuff like that are shorter. I can understand them being frustrated that they're not getting enough, but I really appreciate how efficient they are with these storylines in like this compact format.
Yeah.
Seriously, Australian television is it's severely underrated.
It's excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm extremely confident that the 5th episode will be great, and then the 6th one will probably just shit the bed, just like Falcon and just like WandaVision.
Just like a lot of shows, right? The penultimate is like the better episode than
Yeah.
the finale.
Penultimate's great. I don't know. I feel like what always happens is that Marvel comes in and goes, hey, I just want to adjust that final episode for how it leads into everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why'd you do that, dude? You undercut what was the direction that this was clearly going. So
That does tend to happen.
yeah. We had did you hit up on this comment here?
Oh no, yeah. Go
Angela
ahead.
said, I saw a theory somewhere that because she knew she was adopted, she was more capable of self-love and heroism. Aw. It's like
Honesty
kind of,
is the best policy.
that makes it like even sadder, more tragic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we've for the most part covered everything. I wanted to see if you guys had any other closing thoughts, both on this episode and expectations for the final 2 episodes. Melissa, if you want to start.
I thought this was such a fantastic episode, and I am really excited for the final 2. And I just cannot stress how much I am impressed by Sophia DiMartino's portrayal of Sylvie. I keep wanting to call her Sophie. It's Sophia's the woman, Sylvie's the character. She's just fantastic, and everything I learn about her is just so exceptional, and just a really interesting little thing that I discovered today. And if you go to the FemTV Twitter, I retweeted it. Apparently, while she was filming this, she was nursing a child, and they actually made the costume so that there were zippers on the front, so she had easy access for feeding her child or for pumping as needed. And I'm like,
awesome.
How many people would make those accommodations for a performer so that they could still do their job? And I have to say kudos to them for that.
Hopefully a lot more.
That's great.
Hopefully a lot more.
Yeah.
I saw that on Reddit. Mike, take that. Clyde, what about you?
I kind of want to echo what Melissa said when I think about Sophia. I didn't know anything about her. She was an unknown. And I love that, because this is a moment where I'm 4 episodes in and I'm like, I'm looking at a rock star. Like, I can't wait to see where her career goes. And I will say in the US, because I think that her portrayal, the subtleties of her facial expressions, the heartwarmingness, but the dark kind of grief that she has for having lost this life, the mistrust, like she does it all really admirably. And I'm excited to see what happens next. I think this is a really fun show. And unlike Grant, my glass is half full. I'm thinking the next 2 episodes are going to crush it, and we're going to be missing Loki very soon.
Mike?
I just want to echo what everybody's saying about Sophie Martino. I pretty sure we're going to have her around in the MCU for a while, and the more the better. This might be weird. The idea, like Loki made a big thing about his fear of being alone. I think the idea that maybe Loki won't end up alone, maybe because he's now found a partner in Sylvie, an alternate version of himself, which if it's romantic, if it's platonic, whatever, but seems like he's found somebody, right? I think that idea is really beautiful and powerful, but also kind of comically tragic, because from a certain point of view, even if he does end up with Sylvie as some kind of life partner, he'll still kind of be alone because she is him. So, this show's kind of nuts that way. It's just that Rick and Morty logic, where something like that could happen. So it's pretty wild. But I was actually really excited for a second when Loki got pruned, and when our Loki got pruned, and it seemed like our Loki going forward was going to be Sophie. And then when they revealed all these other Lokis, I was kind of disappointed. I was like, oh, there's a bunch of them. But that still doesn't undercut the fact that Sylvie is such a powerful character, and I think it's going to have a lot of weight in the MCU to come.
I have two closing thoughts. One is Mobius better come back and he better get his jet ski.
Yes.
And two, nothing better happen to Croaky. Keep Croaky safe. Croaky is too precious.
Yeah. Maybe Kang the Conqueror is going to show up and make some boots out of Croaky.
I was thinking a nice belt.
Or is jet ski not actually jet ski, and it's an acronym the same way that Tahiti was an acronym for Coulson?
How you just
That
gonna
sounds
blow
like
our mind at in the last minute?
That sounds like a hot quake. That sounds
Save that for
that
minute
sounds like
60.
We had to have one.
Yeah. Man.
Just saying.
See, this is why I was like, Melissa's on the show. I gotta see what's up, because you just knew there was gonna be a mic drop at some point.
It just kind of dawned on me. I'm like, what? Like jet ski, Tahiti.
No, please, no.
There's the Kree are involved.
Don't mention that show. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Want to go ahead and Clyde, where can people check you out?
You can find me on Twitter at Clyde Haynes. You can find me on the web at www.keyandclyde.com. That's KEI and Clyde.com.
Melissa, thank you again for joining us. And where can people check you out?
You can find me on Twitter at the Televixen, or at my website, femtvpodcast.com.
Awesome. Mike, do you want people to find you?
You can find me at Mike Moody Garcia on Twitter. Of course, come and find me.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Don't come look for me. I will find you. This is MCU Pod, and we're excited to talk about our penultimate episode next week. It's kind of sad that we're coming to the end, but I'm really excited to see what they do. But you know how we wrap things up with hot quakes. No. MCU later.